Hello, hello. This is the Awful and Awesome Entertainment Wrap, episode 286. This is Rajyasree and
And there's Abhinandan Sekhri, and Rajyasree is trying to sound very husky and
or like Amrish Puri.
Mogambo.
I feel like I'm sounding like Mogambo.
But Rajyasree, is this like you're trying to be like the midlife crisis hitting so sexiness, or is it
My
as
midlife
we Punjabis
crisis-
say cold and cuff?
Cold and cuff.
Are we wearing
How
cuff or are we
tough?
having cuff?
How tough you have a cuff.
But you always used to boast that I never fall ill. I'm Bengali.
I haven't fallen ill. This is because of too much cold coffee, I think.
I see.
Cold coffee.
So please excuse the sound of
The
a voice unless you
huskiness.
like it. In which case, call 1800.
Why? It's not nice.
I'm going to get a lot of hate for these kind of
You
distasteful
know who I'm
jokes.
sounding like? In between, they had this woman do the voiceovers for all those ads, paper boat and all. She always sounded like she had a sore throat. Aapko ye acha lagta. You know that?
Aapko ye, how say it again? Huh?
Aapko ye drink acha lagta hai.
This raspiness.
Is
Is-
Greta Garbo also had this?
No. The best is Betty Davis Eyes, yeah, who sang Betty Davis Eyes. Kim Carnes.
Yeah.
She's got Betty
Same.
Davis. Same. Exact.
Exact.
You just
Even
sing
when
Betty
I
Davis
sing-
Eyes?
I don't want to. Just if we start giving the people what they want all the time.
Then 1800 call 1800. Call me quick. But today we have two films.
Mhm.
We're reviewing a book.
Yes.
We're talking to a book.
Talking to a book. We are talking to a book, and then what
talking to
else are we doing? after that?
we're talking to the author of a book, which we have read.
Yes.
And we have
Interview?
an interview which the less said about the better.
Ah,
Hint, it's about some Bharat Jodo Yatra interview.
I was quite impressed by him. Not by him, by this PR move.
We shall discuss that. But first, I'd like to remind you all to subscribe to News Laundry and pay to keep news free, because we don't take any ads, which is why we can be as outspoken as we are. So do click on subscribe. Go to newslaundry.com, click on the subscribe button and pay to keep news free. Or you can just click on the link below. Or you can call 1-800. But do
Can't say
subscribe.
you can call one. It's so bad. It sounds and pointing to me.
Because you're-
It's not like a hotline that people are calling.
I was saying that you can get
No.
Vyanjan to cook.
Very
What did
bad.
you think?
Very bad. What a sexist. What a sexist.
Did you read Suresh Chandrasekhar, whatever, what's his name?
Sukesh.
Sukesh's Indian Express full page?
I think he is the dude. And if a man was so nice as to gift me so many things. Also, the variety of gifts he gives.
Dogs, horses, cars,
Dog,
jewelry.
watch, money, many more cars, one property, one. He'll get you a contract. What do you want? Every week it's a different kind of gift. What a man.
So, in case Sukesh, you are connected enough to get a podcast listening device in your jail cell,
Yeah.
you have a fan right here.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Sukesh, and I think he's being persecuted just because he's more intelligent than all the people he's made a fool of.
But the thing is that what I love about his latest statement is that whatever Jacqueline has said about me, she's said because of pressure. She's like,
Yeah.
I will not hold it against her.
It's a
It
true
is
love.
True love.
This is
but
true love.
Nora is trying to poison my mind against Jacqueline. So he's still saying Jacqueline ko sab kuch maaf.
Which is
True
true.
love.
And I also feel that so many.
And his wife is
angles-
also defending it.
His wife is also. He must be one of the most fabulous men around because no chick is. No, Nora keeps trashing him.
Nora doesn't really trash him, but kind of says that he's
But
nobody.
I don't think Janhvi Kapoor and Sara Ali Khan come out looking very good in it
Why? What- I
because
don't-
Janhvi accepted a gift of a mithai box and a Frank Mueller watch. Why would you accept that? Sara Ali Khan got some bags from him.
Right?
None of them met him.
Seth did not give good upbringing. But
This is
see,
not
this
Seth's
This is not Seth's fault, of course. But
This is her peer group is very bad.
उसकी संगत ही बुरी है बच्चे.
My daughter is not like that.
But Rajyasree, we have a Aftersun, Thor, Black River by Nilanjana Roy, Sunday Brunch with Rahul Gandhi. All this is coming up. What do you want to start with though?
Have you watched Aftersun?
Yes, I have watched after. I haven't just come here like twiddling my thumbs and just...
Have you really watched it?
Yes, I watched Aftersun and I have notes and I have very voluble notes. Do you want to see my notes this time? You want to see my notes? We're going to...
You've basically copy-pasted from my document.
You don't even come with notes.
It's here.
Yeah.
It's in my brain. My beautiful brain.
So let's start over with an email
Yes.
and then we can...
Is it complimenting me or is it trashing you?
I don't know. Just, I don't know.
We have with us Nilanjana Roy. Nilanjana, welcome.
Thanks. It's great to be on the show.
Okay, so I'm just going to tell everyone a little bit about your new book, Black River, which has been published by Westland. And this is your third novel, but your fourth book, right? Because you have the collection of essays that you had done as well, other than The Wildings and The 100 Names of Darkness. And Nilanjana is not just a novelist, she is a journalist, and for many decades now, and she has written for Guardian, New York Times, Huffington Post, New York Review, and her... I'll let her talk about her two earlier books and describe it herself, but Black River is a noir fiction. It's a crime procedural, and it's just been published, I think. Nilanjana, is it a month since it's been published?
Barely. It came out in early November. And thanks for that very generous introduction. Basically, I'm just old enough, really old. And when you're really old, what happens is that you factor out into the life.
So your first book...
No, but Nilanjana, you grew up in Kolkata?
I ping-ponged between Calcutta and Delhi.
I see.
I had, my grandmother used to stay in Calcutta. And my father was a government servant posted in Delhi. I spent some years at school there. And then came back here for college.
I see. So this is based in the north, this book. And it has elements of, if those of you who've been following news, the crime that we see in some of rural heartland, how communal issues and religious profiles get in the way of banal criminal investigations, etc. So it is a commentary on all that. How would you describe it? What is this a story of for you? Is it a social commentary, or was that the trigger for the book, or is it about a guy who loses? I don't want to give away spoilers, but who has this huge, earth-shattering crime happens in his family, and how that pans out? How would you describe it?
That's a beautiful way to put it. And for me, if you're writing a novel, you should keep the social commentary out of it in an explicit way. What happens is that you're writing about people, and as you so generously put it, it's about a man in midlife facing a terrible loss, and in the aftermath of that loss, trying to find a way through with the help of friends he makes in circumstances that are both ordinary and also quite beautiful and extraordinary. The way in which people come to a city like Delhi, where I've lived myself for about 27 years, first as an outsider and then as somebody who came to belong. And at some point I realized that there are many, many people who share the same experience. And I wanted to write a novel about Delhi from the experience of people who built the city or who have to navigate it in ways that are maybe different from the fairly sheltered lives that we have. Chand announced himself and his friends Rabia and Khalid are two of the people who, in their own ways, sustained his life at a certain point. And then Rabia helps him through the worst of the grief. The social commentary grows inevitably out of the landscape. When you're writing about Delhi, when you're writing about any city in India right now, you can't leave what's happening around us out of the book. Everything that people are facing, we keep talking about politics as though it's a separate thing, these whatever political parties do. But the way politics plays out in real life is that it's felt in the skins of people. It's felt in your closest and most intimate relationships.
In fact, some of the greatest novels of history are very profound social commentaries, whether it's The Grapes of Wrath, whether it even Fitzgerald, the commentary on the Gilded Age, Great Gatsby. Yeah. There is a huge element of social commentary.
Do you want to explain why it's called Black River?
There were two parts to that. And as you said, I don't think social commentary is a bad thing so long as it comes organically and naturally out of the world of your characters. And that's where you're seeing it in Black River. It's set partly in a village that's at the border of Delhi, and the other side of it is set in the Black River itself. And obviously, Black River could mean just the Yamuna with the weight of the pollution that it carries. But I've listened in fascination as different people, different readers have offered their interpretation. And one saw Black River as a metaphor for the stream of migrants who come into the city, unwelcomed, often pushed around the city as, Khalid, Rabia, and Chandar,
Yeah.
still finding their feet somewhere in the murk. And to me, there was a third strain in it, ambiguous emotion. A lot of what we see in Black River is not so black and white, whether it's around a murder, there are no absolute villains. The choices every character makes, I think, is central to the way the novel works. And it was a reflection of my looking around and seeing that the choices that we face in this time, do you hold on to a certain friendship? Do you allow yourself to be shifted out of the country at a time when you have religious tensions flaring? When you're in the middle of your grief and you're offered an easy way out, kill somebody who's from a different faith, would you take it? Would that give you closure? And I didn't interfere too much with my characters' choices. Fictional characters have as much reality as your own friends. But I think Black River just allowed me to leap into the murk. And we have a prejudice against darkness, but sometimes it's only in the darkest of times that you find a certain clarity. I hope that makes sense.
Are you a night person or a day person? When are you most productive?
Oh, I'm a night person.
Oh,
Absolutely a night person.
Is it because your cats are awake at the same time as you then?
That's a polite way to put it.
Just
The
a lot
fact
of
that the cats wake up at 2 in the morning.
you have a lot of cats.
We have 4 cats. They acquired us. It was not the other way around.
I see.
So, in fact, the first book, Nilanjana, why don't you tell Abhinandan about the wildings, which is why this is such a marked difference from your first 2 novels, actually.
Because they're happy.
No, not just because they're happy, because I don't know. So that is something. What made you choose to write on crime? Because it's such a departure from your earlier
And not
2
just
novels.
crime. It
Yeah.
is. I mean, it's not ki bhai dekho robbery ho gaya. It's
Haan,
like
it's a
more than
social
crime. It is
commentary,
it's a macabre crime. It's like a depressing crime. It's not an ordinary crime. Yeah.
I think I'm someone who draws deeply from whatever's around us. So the first 2 books, The Wildings and The 100 Names of Darkness, were a bit of a romp. It was like exploring Delhi from the perspective of a clan of stray cats and cheels and a zoo tiger and a dog called Doginder Singh, whom I grew very fond of. And while they face a lot of trouble, as does anybody who's out on the streets in this city, there's a lot of bonhomie and laughter, and it was a really warm set of books. By the time I started to write Black River, though I'd been a reporter for, among other things, the New York Times on gender, I'd started off with the Telegraph in Calcutta. And I think what I was seeing around me was not just a grim landscape. Grimness is one thing, but heart-wrenching is another. And I had nowhere to put the grief and anger that I was feeling and hearing about. You mentioned terrible crimes, and there are actually 2 murders and 1 string of terrible crimes against children in Black River. And I didn't want to put this into an editorial because that stopped short at 800 words, but somewhere maybe some of the helplessness that all of us feel. You go out and you protest in 2012. Before that, you've had so many movements for justice. And at the same time, you live in a country where you feel often as though the lives of women are expendable, or that a certain kind of murder. It might be, a shocking murder, but if it's not vivid enough to capture the headlines, everybody moves on. And what they leave behind is a family and a village shattered by grief. And you asked about the difference in tone. I think that came somewhat, I was writing a lot of this in 2015 to 2020, roughly, with drafts and stuff. I'm a very slow writer because I'm very easily distracted by many other things. But I felt an uneasiness. You feel it first instinctively. You feel that the country is being changed. There was a grimness creeping into everyday life. We were hearing about lynchings, and we were being turned against one another. I always remind myself of this. It's never Hindus versus Muslims or, Hindus versus Christians or whatever. It's Indian versus Indian. And I felt that something was being savagely and determinedly severe. And when that happens within small communities or within a big city like Delhi, where people have learned to live side by side after, with a great deal of effort and with the memory of centuries of living alongside one another behind that, then to disrupt that it sets off reverberations. And I guess Black River was a way of exploring that, what shatters and what lasts.
Right. So what you said about, you've been a journalist for a number of years, and I mean, you didn't say that, but I guess that affects what are the thoughts that come to your mind, what you feel like writing about. And I think this is something that a lot of young journalists have to face, which maybe journalists in the 80s and 90s who were just coming into the workforce didn't have to face, is it wasn't like a first exposure to journalism and prime time. There was no prime time back then. It was, at least when I started, it was news track. It was a cassette, so you could watch it at any time. There was like the story on Pooja Bedi. Then there'd be the story because, she did that Kama Sutra ad, which became this huge story. Then there was a story about, the Rajan Pillai, the Biscuit King died. Then Babri was, but then there was, it wasn't like you weren't bombarded with just the kind of toxic. And I think today, if you've been a journalist between, let's say, 2010 to 2020, that decade, as opposed to 90 to 2000, just what are the thoughts that inhabit your mind are very different today, and probably that shows up in the book, right?
That's so cute. Abhinandan, the kind of journalism that you do at News Laundry is now rare, not just News Laundry, but a few independent groups of the media who still track a story over a long period of time, follow it. Now, if you're a young journalist, it doesn't matter whether you have a conscience or ideals yourself or, a sense of duty. Ultimately, people who joined the media used to be people who had, oddly enough, a sense of civic duty, as citizens. You wanted to report on something real, maybe to make a difference or not, but a lot of us came into the profession because at heart we were fascinated by the country as well. And what you're asked to do in news today is to, go on the attack, in a sense, against whatever targets are the targets of the day. And you're also asked to keep your attention zooming around at high speed. There's no time to settle. There's no time to stop and ask yourself, what does it mean? I think I'm a little harsh on the journalists who appear briefly in Black River. But, that kind of invasive...
No, I don't think you're too harsh.
No, I don't think people are allowed or want to also follow a story. So it's there for those 3 days. You will hear
exactly
the same thing being reported across channels and newspapers on any murder, say, that has happened. That girl who got murdered, that minister's son, she was a receptionist.
Yeah.
And you felt like, oh my God, everyone's following this story. And I gave it 5 days. It maybe took 7 days. But everyone forgot about it. And it's the next big story and the next big story.
I think there's an inevitability to that. And that's because I don't think anyone wants to or not doesn't want to. Like any industry, all the people who are a part of that industry, it becomes a conditioned reflex of how to deal with whatever, variables you're playing with based on what is the model. Like Wall Street, I don't think people who choose banking as opposed to people who choose some other profession are lower in caliber and, human values but the reflex action is shaped by how the industry works. So, you're selling a dud product, but that's what everyone's doing. So you do that. You're not, you're not really processing the information. Why am I doing this? I know certain bankers who did post Lehman. There were a lot of these people. I don't know whether, you know many people in the finance industry, but there were so many people who came out with this whole guilt, this post-Lehman guilt. But if you speak with them, they were like, we weren't really thinking about it when you're doing what we were doing. There is maybe not consciously, but there is a certain, I can see of this book being made into a film. I can see it. There's a screenplay quality to the narrative. Do you see that? Would you be would you consider this being made into a Netflix series? Do you think that is a good way to get more books out to more people when they've stopped reading so much? Or are you one of those who thinks that this whole trend of everyone from Rushdie to Vikram Chandra's Sacred Games to even Chetan Bhagat, everyone being made into Netflix is a bad thing for writing? Where are you on this?
Again, a thoughtful question. I love watching books made into movies or series so long as they're made well and so long as they're made with a little bit of, creative passion. I honestly didn't think about the possibility of this being turned into a series. I was focusing so hard on the book, the world, the characters, they were very dear to me. But maybe the reason you're saying that is because everything was, very sharp and very visual in my mind. It's strange to say this about fiction, but you experience it. And I just did my best to translate that. I'd be totally open to somebody doing it as a film, because you're always interested to see how your book changes in somebody else's hands. They bring their own vision to it. I don't think this is a bad thing for reading. I believe that it can be if people stop reading books and move only to the series, but that's a very personal choice. On the other hand, so many books that Sacred Games was big many, many decades ago. And it's just so beautiful to see it have a second life, right?
Yeah.
With the TV show and with people rediscovering that.
I wish I could say the same about Midnight's Children, which was definitely not the case.
Can we just... I love the book. And I've read a screenplay that Rushdie wrote. His original screenplay was quite beautiful. And let me stop.
I see. And The Great Gatsby was such a shit film, man. It was such a lovely book.
I usually find the books are better than the films.
It depends. You have Rebecca, Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca.
Yeah, okay.
It's been made into a terrible modern movie, but a really, really good old black and white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The modern one you can't watch, however good looking they all are in the film.
Omen,
the book is
movie.
very good.
But so is the movie.
I'll tell you the only film which was better than the book. No, which was better, is East of Eden, Khoon Bhari Mang. Is better than...
I don't know. I didn't even know Khoon Bhari Mang was based on East of Eden.
East of Eden.
But Rachya, I didn't ask you.
Wait a second. Hindi cinema has been pretty good at adaptations. I mean, starting with Guru Dutt. Come on, Shatranj Ke Khilari again, Shrutijit Ray. We have to get back to Bengaliness into this. But he did such a gripping version of the Premchand short story. So that's the thing,
I haven't read Guide, but apparently R.K. Narayan was very unhappy with it. But I think it's one of my favorite films, man.
So I've never watched Guide.
You've missed something.
I've led a very sheltered life.
Also, I'd say the top...
I think one of you needs to read the book and one of you needs to watch
I've watched the film, so now it's up to she needs to read the book. I watched the film and I know I've read articles about how R.K. Narayan was not at all happy with what he saw on screen. That's all I know. But Rajyasree, we didn't ask you. You are obviously a night person because it'll be strange to see a broom flying around in the sky in the day.
Nilanjana is not going to encourage this kind of loose talk about my character.
but when you're not killing
she
people
has the
at
most
night.
elegant broom in the whole of the sky. I would say that.
Elegant broom. Acha, so maybe Arvind Kejriwal should get in touch.
What nasty question did you have for me? You forgot.
Are you a day person or night person? But
I barely sleep. I sleep like 4 hours or something.
Right.
But that's why I'm like Mr. Modi. I'll also be very successful.
आप थकते ही नहीं?
Did you just say that you were like Mr. Modi?
She's like Mr. Because she only sleeps 4 hours a day and works non-stop. And
even my skin started glowing like his.
And
I've never looked at his skin before.
How, Nilanjana, what are you saying? So this is something I've always noticed since I knew Jyoti Basu.
Politicians have closed pores.
No, politicians get... So Jyoti Basu supports it. I know this is a lie because his granddaughter is a friend of mine also. But the myth was that he used to get some monkey gland enzyme injected into his face, but all that is not true. But politicians tend to have glowing skin. Even Mamata's skin just glows now.
Yeah, that is because you get everything. Anyway, that we are getting into
That
now
is a
skincare
different-
product. That's a
that's a
different
topic
that
for-
we'll discuss when the
What's
show's.
that? Rahul Gandhi, who's got that healthy, I can outwalk all of you. You know,
Yeah.
yeah. Great skin.
Great. That's what
Yeah,
it's
beta,
something.
if you have.
Abhinandan sounding a little plaintive at that end of the mic.
Yeah, I don't know why. Why are you not agreeing with us?
Because this is it's not a show about cosmetics and these kind
Are
of
you
things.
sure?
Yeah,
Nowadays.
No one told me that.
So I said when Nykaa, what is that?
Nykaa.
When Nykaa sponsors the show, then we'll talk about these kind of. So we'll start off with an email, but the rest of this podcast is audio only. So do listen. This is it for the video section. Don't call any number. We don't talk. The subscription model is something that keeps News Laundry afloat, but we need hundreds of thousands of people to completely transform the news ecosystem. So you pay for news, so it serves you. So click on the link with this video, subscribe to News Laundry and pay to keep news free. और गर्व से कहो मेरे खर्च पर आज़ाद है खबरें.